Flamu, don't forget, hello, hello. This is not a YouTube video, this is stream, so whatever. Let's turn. I'm gonna mute notifications as well, so they don't get too. Actually, you know, I've gotten copyright struck for my notifications because I have that Lonely Island, You're So Humble song playing. That thing has actually gotten me copyright, like, or they claimed the monetization based on that short clip. So yeah, it will be a vid though. Yeah, fine. Let's make a vid. So legendary upgrades. I don't even remember which all ships had them. Well, not premiums, that for sure. We can just do. Let's do tech tree ships. Oh, not like that. There we go. Like this. Metal Mickey, thank you for the sub. Let's see. Starting off, legendary upgrades. Shimakaze. Shimakaze legendary upgrade is probably one of the worst legendary upgrades in the entire game because it actively nerfs you. Now, it looks on first glance, it looks great. It's like, it gives you what, 15%, 25% faster torpedo reload compared to the normal one that only gives you 15. So you're getting 10% faster torpedo reload. Wow, this looks amazing. This looks really useful. Except torpedo tubes traverse speed minus 80%. This is a huge issue because it actually makes your torpedo tube traverse speed 30 seconds. And this actually means that in any sort of brawling situation, your torpedoes are completely unusable. Because you can't, if you can't brawl, like you can't knife fight any other DDs, because your torpedo tubes are basically as slow as Kremlin turrets. And if you make any sort of turn, let's say you're sailing like this, and then you have to turn around, you have to turn your ship around, and you want to torp using your other side, then you have to wait a full 30 seconds for your torp tubes to basically traverse the other way. So the very small reload buff you gain isn't actually a realistic gain. It's a statistical gain. In actual real-life situations, most of the time you find yourself waiting for your torp tubes many seconds, 10 to 15 seconds, which is actually longer than the increased cooldown that you gain. Not to mention that, of course, it makes you completely trash in knife fights. So this is one of the few legendary upgrades that actually makes your ship worse. It straight up makes your ship worse. Not recommended ever. Not even with 20 km torpedoes, because it's just so bad. And I mean, you shouldn't be running 20 km torpedoes, because even then, no. There's never any situation. You don't want to gimp yourself. You don't want to gimp yourself in a situation that you can't do any sort of rushing. So, horrendous. Disagree. Shima doesn't battle, it hides and torps. Control X is your friend. Okay, Timmy Guy, we're gonna have to agree to disagree. If you think a Shima doesn't battle, then there's not much I can tell you about how to play a Shimakaze. You have already made up your mind, and you're basically that Shima that no one wants on their team. Moving on. Harugumo didn't have a legendary upgrade. Zhao, on the other hand, has a legendary upgrade. And Zhao's legendary upgrade is actually one of the best legendary upgrades in the game. This thing is straight up spice. First of all, it's in the 6th slot. Many of these upgrades are in the 5th slot, which usually interfere with your concealment, but this one is in the 6th slot, which means what you're actually trading off. Normally you probably run main battery, which is 12% reload. So in this case, what you're gaining from this thing isn't reload, but you gain 8% range, and you gain 7% maximum dispersion. This means Zhao already has DD dispersion. With this additional dispersion, you basically have the most accurate cruiser guns in the game. Add this to the 20% rudder shift, and it means that the Zhao has an insane rudder shift of 4.9 seconds, which is actually better than some destroyers. Now the turning circle is fairly large, so don't be thinking you're as nimble as a destroyer, and obviously the turn rate isn't as fast. People always... I hate that Wargaming doesn't like label turn rate, because it's pretty important. But Zhao doesn't have, that's the DD turn rate either, but it is very nimble, and this combined with the good stealth and overall good armor of the Zhao just fits its playstyle so very well. So this is absolutely one of my top 3 legendary upgrades. It makes the ship more agile, more accurate, and gives it more range. What more could you ask for? Yamato, another one that's one of the best. In fact, yeah, I have it slotted here just to show how damn good it is. And well, the thing which you want with a ship like Yamato is of course improved dispersion. That's what you want with all battleships. If you can land your shells, that's how you do damage. So that's what you want most of all. This thing gives you 7% better dispersion and 6% better reload. Now normally you'd run main battery mod 3, which would be a 12% reload. This thing is only a 6. So you lose out on 6% reload, and you also, the main battery traverse speed also gets even slower. So generally you want to be running something like Yamamoto or a captain with expert marksman, because this makes your turret traverse painfully sluggish if you're not running it, 74 seconds, but it's still absolutely worth it. Legendary Yamato dispersion is god tier, and because of that overmatch, landing shells means dealing damage. Making these guns more consistent is highly recommended, and this is also one of my top 3 legendary upgrades. I'm not going to be touching on the carriers because I don't play enough carriers to make an informed decision regarding those. Gearing upgrade is basically only for competitive. Gearing's upgrade, what it does is it gives you 5% extra concealment compared to the normal concealment at the cost of 15% main battery reload and 5% torpedo tube reload. For random battles, this thing is trash. Because anyone who's played random battles solo knows that when you spot the DD, your battleships are shooting the battleship 20 kilometers away, and your cruiser are farming the nose-in battleship as well, and the only one who's actually shooting the DD that you're spotting is yourself. I've said it before, in random battles, the only teammate you can trust is yourself. Everyone else is redundant, like, they're just useless. Don't expect anything from them. And the issue with this modified hull upgrade is that you take away 50% of your own carry power, your own main battery guns. You take away 15% of that, and you place it in the hands of your teammates. And generally speaking, that's a really bad idea. I mean, it will bump up your concealment a bit, and this thing is obviously great in competitive, because being able to spot the enemy DD before they spot you is a huge mandatory thing, because in competitive everyone focuses the DD instantly. So this is very much a competitive upgrade. For random battles though, I don't see any reason to run it. Just get that 15% duck and 5% torpedo reload instead. It's much more useful. Des Moines. The legendary upgrade on this thing is actually pretty troll. Now, the thing is, what you're trading off if you run this thing is most of the time main battery reload. So people like to think, oh, if you put this on, you're only gaining things, but no, you're not just gaining, you're also giving up 12% reload to get it. However, this thing is pretty damn amusing. It encourages a different playstyle, because if you run both this thing, note that this gives both rudder shift and acceleration, which means you don't need to run rudder shift here, you can run acceleration here. And this is called a double acceleration legendary build. And you already have a really good rudder shift to 6.9 with this build, but your acceleration is just straight up hilarious. Like, it just, you speed off like a rocket. And you stop fast and you speed off like a rocket, and you can be very erratic, surprising. It can be hard to shoot you. You see a battleship, you sit still, you see a battleship shoot you, you accelerate out of the way, and the shells literally land behind you. So there are absolutely options to play. If you like playing with your speed, if you like playing with your acceleration, legendary Des Moines is very, very good. It doesn't make the top 3 though, because ultimately sitting behind an island or just straight out trading enemy ships by running this thing is pretty damn good as well. So it's Tokyo Drift Des Moines. It's a fun meme build and it's very strong, but I would say it's kind of just equal to the normal Des Moines. It's a different approach. Legendary DM is hilariously fun. I'm not going to go out of my way and say it's better though, because it's situational. In situations where you can use smoke, you can use cover, and all you're basically doing is wailing down damage on the enemy, this upgrade will obviously be significantly better. Worcester. What the hell was this thing? Oh, enhanced countermeasures. I would say more of a competitive thing, and only if you have someone to smoke you up. Most of the time, Worcesters are really good on flanks or just behind islands, but the biggest issue really with this legendary upgrade is that it boosts things that already have very long duration. If you catch someone in your radar, they're not unlikely to sit in your radar for that full duration, that 40 seconds or whatever it is. They're very unlikely to actually sit in it. So most of the time this is kind of wasted, especially since radar on light cruisers has been normalized to this 9 kilometers. More than likely by the time this radar runs out, the target will either be dead or it will have left your radar range. So this buff is questionable. Defensive AA, kind of same thing. Unlikely a carrier will fly around in your AA for the full 48 seconds. More than likely it will be effective the first 20 or so, and then you're gonna reset it yourself. Same thing with the Hydro. Hydro, I mean, that's probably the most useless factor here, the increased Hydro. If you're pushing up and you know there's a DD who's dropping torps or whatever, having increased Hydro duration is probably the most useful one of all of these. The issue is that what you're trading in order to get this is the best stat in the game for a light cruiser, especially a radar light cruiser, and that is concealment. So in a division, someone to smoke you up, someone to support you, sure, it's a good upgrade, but for just solo play, I have a hard time justifying using it over concealment. Concealment is just straight up better. I mean, you also get the increased dispersion of shells fired on your ship, which on a booster with that small citadel can also save you. So, division play, yay. Solo or any sort of flank play, nay. Just nay. Montana Legendary is another one that's questionable. Well, Montana as a whole is kind of questionable. What it does is enhanced damage control systems. Now, what is useful about this thing? Well, it reduces your fire extinguishing time by 15%. The steering gear's repair time to 70%, that's basically useless. You rarely, if ever, lose your rudder. The rudder shift time is really good, and the fire extinguishing time is really good. The flooding is pretty okay. The steering gear's repair time is useless. So what are the benefits of this thing? Well, you become basically immune to fires. Fires and flooding are if you run the full build with this, and then you mix in others, you stack them on top of each other, fires are kind of ignorable. The issue is that it makes your concealment complete trash. I think I actually played, I even have on YouTube a vid of playing this thing. But the biggest issue that this does, it makes your concealment, let's show a ship here. It makes your concealment a 15.6 kilometers. 15.6 kilometers on a battleship means that you are basically never ever going to get undetected. Basically never going to be undetected. You're always going to be spotted. And on a Montana, even if you're just running fire prevention and basics, you're already pretty damn resistant against HE, and you're pretty resistant against fires. So this doesn't really offer you a lot of benefits. Whereas being able to sneak up on them with concealment or disengage with concealment might be much more useful. I've tried it, and if you division with a carrier, I think this thing is really good. Because with a carrier, everyone is spotted all the time anyway, concealment doesn't matter, there's a lot of HE shells being fired back and forth. This thing shines when you division with a carrier. For solo play, if you can't ensure that there's a carrier, when people are doing carrier directives, I like running it. But if you can't ensure it, concealment is just going to be better. Concealment is just going to be better most of the time. Because when you run the improved dispersion module on the Montana, what you want to do is get as close as you can and then unleash a full volley with this improved dispersion and catch people off guard and delete them. If you can't catch them off guard and they know where you're shooting from, Montana sadly only has 406mm guns, so it's pretty easy to angle against this AP and mitigate the damage significantly. So no, can't really recommend it. It's more division play. Khaba Legendary upgrade is another upgrade that is basically completely useless. It's just straight up trash. Basically what it does is, let's put heavyweight artillery. Heavyweight artillery gives you 8% range, minus 6% reload, and worse turret traverse. Now this sounds like a really good upgrade. Like on paper, this is like, wow, what a great upgrade. Like it goes into concealment slot. Who cares about concealment in the Khaba anyway? You're going to be shooting all the time. Well, the issue is that after they nerfed Khaba rudder shift, it basically is mandatory to run steering gears mod 3. It's mandatory because you handle like trash and you hit full battleship AP pens. If you run this mod, yes, with an AFT captain. Do we have an AFT captain around? Come on. Hello. Do we have an AFT? Come on, give me some captain from here. Looks like we don't. Will yoink Ognavoy? No, he's not. Udalai, he's got AFT. Let's yoink him. For the sake of testing, Mr. Udalai captain will be moved over. Oh, he doesn't have AFT either. This skill build is just to show AFT range. With AFT range, you can get a pretty nice range of 14.6. Now, this sounds nice, but then you start looking at the actual issues here. Main battery, reload, turret traverse and reload are both fine. The gun battery seems really good, but your rudder shift. 8.9 second rudder shift on a destroyer. This is brutal. This is, to put it in perspective, I'm pretty sure this is Hindenburg's rudder shift. Where's Hindenburg? No, Hindenburg is 9.7. I'm sorry. It's actually slightly better than Hindenburg's. Very, very good. What was Des Moines? Des Moines with... Oh, Des Moines is 8.6. So it's worse rudder shift than Des Moines. Now, Kaba eats full battleship AP penetrations. So being agile and being untouchable is basically its gimmick. It's what it's supposed to be good at. But with this rudder shift, you are very easy to hit at range because you're a huge ship. You hit full battleship AP pens, which means they don't even need to switch to HE. They can just take pot shots at you. And because with this build your concealment is also trash, 9.7, you can't push in anywhere. If you try to push in with 9.7, you get outspotted by cruisers. Like, cruisers will outspot this thing. Multiple ones will outspot this thing. And trying to push in, being spotted, having to use a 9-second rudder shift and 760-meter turning circle to very, very slowly wear out while everyone turns their guns and starts firing on you, it's terrible. It just... You lose agility for 6% reload. It's not worth it. The range increase is also questionable at best. At best, I have managed to make use of the legendary module using smoke. Because then you can smoke up and you can sit in the smoke and you can kind of farm, but even then it just doesn't fulfill its purpose. I mean, Kaba is already in a bad spot. The legendary upgrade doesn't solve this issue. It kind of just makes it worse. Grozovoi. Grozovoi upgrade is very good. Grozovoi upgrade is very good if you're building for pure guns. You go for the full gunboat build. The recoilless main battery guns, they give you 8% reload at the cost of 7% traverse and 10% torpedo tube reload. 7% traverse doesn't matter because you got DD traverse, it's really fast, it's not an issue. You gotta remember though that you're not getting the full 18, you're only getting 6 because normally you would be running this one. So what you're getting is basically 6% reload. This is, oh sorry, yeah, 6% reload is what you're getting at the cost of 10% torpedo tube. What this means is when you slot this legendary upgrade is that you're giving up your hybrid capacity because your torpedo tube reload becomes dreadfully bad, but you're gaining a lot of gun power. Normally, if you run this thing, it's because you're also running Gunboat Grozovoi. These things go very, very well in hand. And Gunboat Grozovoi works very well because you got a good fire chance, you got some of the fastest shell velocity in the game for a DD, you got really good AP pen, only second to Kleber. It's a very strong build. And if you want to go full Gunboat Grozovoi, this legendary upgrade just makes it straight up better. It's very, very good. How did you get 14 plus gun range on the Kebab? The legendary upgrade. Moskva, probably one of the best upgrades in the game. Moskva's bread and butter are the accurate guns, especially the AP, and the legendary upgrade just makes it better. It gives you 8% range, it gives you 11% reduced dispersion. It costs you some turret traverse speed, but it's not too big of a deal on the Moskva. Normally you'd be running this, the reload, but this thing is much better than the 12% reload. If you manage to radar DDs with this improved dispersion and incredible shell velocity of the Moskva, 985, I mean, you can already shoot, you can easily actually make use of this extra range as well, because you can easily blap targets 21 kilometers away, and the AP penetration on the Moskva is brutal, and this allows you to snipe broadside cruisers, snipe multiple things. In fact, I can show you real fast. This is your penetration capacity, and you will find right here next underneath the Puerto Rico and Yoshino, you will find Moskva's AP penetration. If you consider that something like a Des Moines has 152mm armor plating on the citadel, a Moskva can pen 260, 100mm more than needed at 19 kilometers. You can citadel basically any cruiser at max range in the Moskva. The AP is that strong. So the legendary upgrade improving this dispersion and this range, it just buffs your strength, which is the guns. It is very, very good. So this is highly recommended and one of the top 3. For those that missed it, my top 3 legendary upgrades is Yamato, Moskva, and Zal. I think those are the best in the game. Z52, the thing that actually started me going through all these legendary upgrades. The Z52 legendary upgrade is trash. Now, why is it trash? What it does is it gives you low profile torpedo tubes. What it essentially does, it reduces your detectability by 5% and increases your torpedo tube reload time by 15%. Once again, on paper, this looks very, very good. The issue is that in order to get this, you have to give up concealment, which means you're giving up 10% concealment and you're gaining 5. And you're also giving up the reduced dispersion, or increased dispersion, sorry. Now, the important thing is, why is it such a big deal to give up 5% concealment? It doesn't seem like a big trade. The multi-fundamental issue is that when you run the concealment module, you have 6.1 km concealment. When you run this thing, you have a nice, smooth 6.1 km concealment. This synergizes extremely well with your consumable setup. You have access to German hydro. This is the gimmick of the Z52. It has the 6 km hydro detection for ships, which means if you're pushing into a cap and you're running hydro, if you get spotted, you're basically going to hydro them right after, because the difference is so small. It's only 0.1, 100 meters. Very, very small, and it's almost impossible to play around this detection for an enemy ship. If they see a Z52, they're going to get hydroed right after. That's the way it works. The synergy there is amazing. That's the strength, that's the gimmick of the Z52. The problem is, when you run this low profile setup, what happens is your concealment becomes 6.4. That's a 400-meter buffer between your hydro and your detection. So this gives the DD time that when they see you, they have time to begin their turn and already start kiting away. And when you catch up to them with the hydro, well, you can start trading with them, but you can't slow down and smoke and catch them in your hydro because they're already running away. They're already disengaging from the fight. And you're forced to smoke up and slow down because you're such a big ship. The Z52 is gigantic. It doesn't handle particularly well. And people love shooting this thing. It doesn't have too much health either. So you are forced to smoke up. And what it does is it kills your DD hunting capacity. What you gain in return is 15% torpedo reload, which is nice and all, but your torpedoes are never going to be that special. You have 8 torpedoes. Z52's gimmick is the fast reloading torpedoes. This makes the gimmick slightly better, but it comes at the cost of all your DD hunting capacity. It's a really poor trade, and it's a really bad upgrade. Not recommended at all. Next up, Hindenburg. Hindenburg is one of those legendary upgrades that is also straight up trash. Now, let's see, do we have a commander for this guy? Sure, Mr. Hipper. Weeb Hipper Captain. Does he have concealment? Nice, he's got concealment. That's all I wanted. Right, so what is the issue with this thing? Well, if running the concealment build, you have 12.6 km concealment. Hipper is pretty slow. It has a pretty big, large turning circle, but the concealment is pretty okay. The problem is, when you run this enhanced repair party, what enhanced repair party does is it gains you main battery repair time, minus 50%. You don't really lose turrets too often to begin with. It gives you minus 40% fire extinguishing times. Fires aren't an issue to the Hindenburg. If you die in a Hindenburg, it's unlikely to be because you burn to death. It's because you ate massive BB pens, it's because you ate massive HE pens. Flooding, minus 70%. Once again, especially in the current state when you're most likely running hydro, torpedoes are unlikely to be the issue that gets you killed. And finally, rudder shift time 20%. That's probably the best thing about this. So honestly, the 3 first layers there are useless. Main battery is useless, fire extinguishing is useless, flooding is useless. So what you're actually getting is 20% rudder shift time. What you're trading off is, instead of 12.6 km concealment, and instead of 6.9 air detectability, you instead have 14 and 7.6. What this means is you're going to be eating more of the things that actually kill you, which is battleship AP and cruiser HE spam and all these basically raw shell damage. You're going to be eating more of that in return for being more resistant against something that isn't really a threat to you to begin with. It's a terrible, terrible upgrade. Straight up terrible upgrade. There is no point in running it. You already take very, very limited fire damage in a cruiser. You already have a cruiser damage con, which is very quick. These fires are not going to be an issue. Giving up all of this to get it is a really poor trade. Concealment is bread and butter of pretty much every cruiser out there. It's always more useful because you don't have the armor to mitigate incoming damage. So that's probably one of the worst legendary upgrades. What do you have next? Kurfürst. Oh, Kurfürst upgrade. This thing, well, was enhanced main armaments. What does it do? It trades off. You give 15% main reload battery, 15% secondary main battery, but it costs you 8% range and 8% traverse. Or sorry, 7% traverse. Now, first glance, once again, wow, what a great trade. What a great trade. But what actually you need to remember is that you're replacing main battery. Main battery gives you 12% reload. So what you're actually getting in terms of main battery reload capacity is 3%. One of the biggest weaknesses of the Grosse Kurfürst, besides its really awkward firing angles and of course handling, is that this ship is incredibly starved for range. This thing has the poorest range pretty much of all tier 10 battleships, and this thing nerfs it to 19 kilometers. This is dreadful. This is straight up just a horrendous range. You do get less turret traverse penalty. This is basically a brawling. This is for brawling setups. The only time I could see myself running this if I would be running a full secondary build Grosse Kurfürst. But we all know how effective that really is. Most of the time you get much better rewards and much better consistency running main battery builds. Just tank build. In an ideal world, where no smallness exists, where no carriers exist, where you can actually push in without being melted on the way, this upgrade would be great on a brawling Grosse Kurfürst. But in actuality, this thing tends to be just a straight up downgrade. It's not worth it. 15% secondary reload, it's hard to even notice it. 3% main battery reload at the cost of all that range. Oh, you will notice that. Trust me, you will very much notice that nerf. Going from 20.6 to 19 is painful. So no, I do not recommend the Grosse Kurfürst legendary upgrade either. If you're playing for fun and secondaries, it will give you a slight buff, a very slight buff. 3% main battery, 15% secondaries. Unlikely to notice it, but it will give you a slight buff. Still not recommended at all. RIP? No, there's no RIP here. Everything is fine. Daring. Daring didn't have a legendary upgrade. Nope. Minotaur. Oh, Minotaur had one, didn't that? Let's see. What was Minotaur? Enhanced smoke generator. This is, well, obviously, if you're running this, it's for team memes. This is for meme builds. Obviously, the concealment one is much better, especially if you're running radar. Then I don't have to tell you that this is completely useless. But if you're running the meme builds, you can make some absolutely hilarious smoke clouds with this. If you're divisioning with, let's say, a Smolensk and a Worcester or something similar, and you can take the role of basically a gearing or a destroyer in the Minotaur if you run this build. This is the biggest weight nation you're ever gonna do, because what you do is you combine enhanced smoke generator and you combine it with this upgrade. Where the hell is it? Where is it? This one. Smoke generator modification 1. What this combination does is when you're running both of these, is your smoke has a 49-second deployment time or action time. What this means is when you press your smoke button, your smoke remains active for 50 seconds. You can literally make a 50 seconds, almost 1 minute of just laying smoke across the map. And this smoke lasts for 1.5 minutes. So you can block off an entire section of the map with smoke for 1.5 minutes. Now this becomes extra powerful when you combine it with, where the hell is it? This is obviously very much meme builds, but if you combine it with this guy, then you have this. Note that this is a special captain perk. Smoke skill expert, this is extra strong. This increases the radius to 30%. And then you can combine it with Jack of all trades, so it's a 10% faster cooldown. So what this means is, well, it's almost twice as large as Gearing Smoke Cloud. The Smoke Cloud is gigantic. And you can lay it for almost a minute, and it lasts 1.5 minutes. You become the ultimate Wape Nation. The amount of smoke you can lay down with this build is completely hilarious. I can show you some of these things in the training room afterwards. I can show you the size of the Minotaur smoke, and I can show you the Moines with the acceleration, just how quick they are. But both of those are hilarious. They're both memes, but they both have their strengths, and if you get the perfect opportunity, they can be very, very strong. But obviously, if you're playing solo, most of the time it's not as good as Concealment. I doubt I have to tell you that. For solo, it's more of a meme, funny division play. For solo play, not recommended. Conqueror, let's see. Oh my, well this is obviously... This one is pretty much terrible. Conqueror's main strength. What makes Conqueror very unique among most battleships is that this thing actually has insanely good concealment. Let me show you. Let's put a camo on this thing. Let's put a camo on this thing. Quickly spec Captain. There we go. So Conqueror's, one of Conqueror's strengths is the detectability of this compared to other tier 10 battleships is insane. This thing is stupid stealthy for a battleship. 12.3 km concealment. You remember how I talked about Hindenburg's concealment? Hindenburg was 12.6. Conqueror can reach 12.3. It's the stealthiest tier 10 battleship in the game. It is insanely sneaky. Now, what the legendary upgrade does is to trade away this huge advantage in concealment that allows you to sneak up on cruisers and the like, and you trade it instead for faster turret traverse speed. That's not really an issue. It's not really something that needs to be compensated. It's not a bad upgrade, but it's not that good either. 40% rudder shift and 80% steering gears repair time. Now once again, steering gears repair time is basically completely useless. The only time it breaks is when you hit the torpedo to the stern. The rest of the time, highly unlikely to break. The rudder shift time though, you cut it down to 10.4. You've still got a fairly large turning circle. This isn't really that valuable. You're trading off both defensive and offensive capacity for really fast rudder shift, which you're really unlikely to use to begin with. The only time this extra fast rudder shift is useful is when you're brawling. And you don't want to brawl with the Conqueror ever since they did this to the Citadel. Ever since they made the Citadel look like this, brawling in the Conqueror is just a no-no. You just get deleted. You really don't want to brawl in the Conqueror. So, getting this upgrade, it makes one of your weakest aspects slightly less weak, at the cost of nerfing your overall survivability and nerfing your overall offensive capacity. It's terrible. It's not recommended. As someone said, it's only worth it when you get it for free on the Thunder. The Thunder has this rudder shift for free. So no, this one is not recommended. It's a poor upgrade. What others? Kleber doesn't have one. Oh, Henry has one that fits very well with full Daka build. On the Henry, you can actually combine it for some really stupid damage, and that is what this thing does. Is it gives you 8% increased range and 12% increase faster reload. This doesn't come cheap though. You might think, oh, it nerfs your detectability by 10%. It's actually worse than that, because normally in this slot you would be running the 10% reduced concealment. So what happens is you lose the -10 and then you gain another +10 on top. So even if you're running camo on this thing, it makes your stock concealment a very trollish 17.7 kilometers. You're basically spotted from the moon. You can offset it a bit. You can get it down to about 16-ish when you build Concealment Expert. You can get it down a bit by building Concealment Expert. This cuts it down to, what, 15.9. It's still brutal, obviously. It's still brutal. But on the other side, on the other hand, Henry doesn't care too much. Because Henry doesn't rely on concealment as much as many other cruisers. Henry is not a stationary cruiser. Henry is a flanking, long-range, HE spamming speed monster, because it has access to that French speed boost, which you can buff to last 4.5 minutes. It's fast, it's agile, and it's got that trolley layered armor. Let me see if I can show you guys. You see this? This is layered armor. What this means is you have an outer layer of armor and then you have an inner layer. And because they're both so strong, what happens is this part is called the black hole. Shells disappear in there. They pen the outer layer, but then they shatter on the inner layer. You get 0 damage. It basically has a very trolley armor. This combined with incredible acceleration and incredible speed means that Henry is probably the only ship that can get away, the only cruiser that can really get away with running this upgrade. Add in that you can buff this with main battery reload as well. And these guns, suddenly, these huge guns with 240mm caliber has a 10-second reload. Keep in mind that the Henry also has access to main battery reload booster, so you can cut this down to 5 seconds at times. Keep in mind that the French special captain, Honor, has improved adrenaline rush, which instead of giving you 0.2, it can give you 0.25% reduction for each percentage of health lost. So what you end up having is when you pop the reload boost, you can be firing full volleys of 240mm AP as often as every 4 seconds. You become an insane damage potential monster. Obviously, it costs you a lot. It's pretty difficult to play. You get spotted, focused a lot, but the amount of damage you can pump out in this thing is absolutely ridiculous. And for those that missed it, Henry AP is actually some of the best AP in the game. It's got slower shell velocity. Now you might not believe it, because if you look at the shell velocity, you see 845. You remember how Moskva had 985? Yet the AP penetration at range is almost identical, because these heavy shells, they maintain their penetrative capacity so well at range. So, in fact, I can show you here. Remember how this was Moskva? This is Henry. Above it. The further out we go, the more above it the Henry sits. At close ranges, it's pretty damn even. Moskva, Henry right next to each other. But because these shells are so heavy, they maintain that penetration so well. So you actually end up with a pretty ridiculous 274mm pen at 19 kilometers. Which, 274 that is. Which is enough, of course, to citadel pretty much every cruiser in the game. The AP is brutally powerful. The AP is brutally powerful. Of course, Henry is also known for its improved penetration on the main guns. 39, which means if you build IFHE, you cross a pretty magical threshold of 50mm, which obviously means this ship is a great counter against the likes of Stalingrad, Moskva, and such. So Henry is a ship that is built around the main guns and speed. This is the reason why the legendary upgrade actually works pretty damn well if you go for this build. So I wouldn't call this a direct upgrade, it's a side grade, because you have to give up so much to give it. You have to give up so much concealment, but it can be very powerful in the right hands. It murders a lot of things. Keep in mind though that you go, the difference between not running it is you go from 15.9 to 13 kilometers. It's almost 3 kilometers of concealment on a cruiser. It's a significant difference. But side grade, quite a fun upgrade. Doesn't make it to the top obviously, but quite a fun one. Republic. Additional main battery loader. What is Republic's strengths? Well, Republic's strengths is only 8 guns, it's pretty squishy, it's fast, but the ability to blap anyone across the map. What does this thing do? It gives you 18% reload at the cost of 24% main battery firing range and 30% turret traverse speed. This is trash. Why is it trash? Because, well, as I mentioned, one of the great things about this ship is Republic AP is god tier. Republic AP is one of the strongest AP in the game. I can actually show you guys this as well. It's very accurate and it's incredibly powerful. So you want to be able to use that range because the Republic itself is not that strong of a ship when it comes to mitigating damage. It's all 32mm all over the place. This thing melts under HE incredibly quickly. Let me show you guys real fast the AP penetration so you guys know what I'm talking about. Here we go. Here we have the battleships. Let's do like 15 kilometers. This is Slava, the ship that is on hold. Following that, we have Yamato, Kremlin, and then of course Republic, right up there with them. And the further out we go, Republic still maintains that excellent penetration. So the Republic kind of keeps up. If the Ohio has 531, Yamato has 538, Republic has 526. The differences are so small at this range, it's hard to even notice them. At these ranges, it's 524 versus 510. So excellent AP penetration at these incredible ranges, and it maintains the shell velocity very well at these extreme ranges as well. So what happens is that when you slot this upgrade, instead of having your 26 km range, you end up with 19.8. You end up with less range than a Große Kurfürst. Obviously, this is very noticeable. This is a huge downgrade, especially because Republic is one of those battleships that can't slot spotter plane. Even the Große Kurfürst can slot spotter plane to temporarily increase the range. The Republic cannot because it has speed boost. So you are stuck with this reduced range. What are you gaining in return though? Well, you're losing turret reverse speed, which you lose with the normal upgrade. In return, you're gaining 18% main battery reload. But it's actually not 18%, it's 6%, because this one already gives you 12. So what happens is you gain 6% main battery reload at the cost of from 19.8 to 26. 6.3 kilometers range. You lose 6.3 kilometers range for 8% reload. It's a terrible trade. Absolutely terrible trade. And this thing is absolutely not recommended. Just bad. Why only 6? Don't they add up? No, you can only run one. You can only run one. So just absolutely not worth it. Also one of the worst upgrades. Yueyang, did it have one? Oh yeah, it had one. Why have I forgotten it? Probably because it's main battery reload time minus 10% main. Oh yeah, that's why. Now, at first glance, once again, this thing looks pretty okay. You gain 10% reload on both main guns and on torpedoes. It costs you some radar or smoke screen duration for some sort of gunboat build, or if you don't feel like sitting in the smokes long. This might look like a pretty attractive upgrade. You look at this and you go, huh, that's not too bad of a trade, right? But the thing is, what people once again often forget is you're not just losing those things, you're also losing the full benefit of the concealment system modification. So you're losing the 10% concealment and you're losing the 5% dispersion of shells fired on you. So the problem is that if this was in the 6th slot, it might be more interesting. But because it's in the 5th slot and taking the slot of concealment, what you end up with is a Yueyang with 6.5 km concealment. So one of your greatest strengths, which is really good concealment, goes completely out the window. Obviously, this is not worth 10% DPM. Absolutely not. So, terrible upgrade. Not recommended in any way. When you're a DD that relies on stealth, giving up stealth is a very poor trade. What else do we have? Venezia? No, that thing doesn't have one. And I think we just managed to cover all of them except the carriers. And I'm not going to give any opinion on the carriers because I don't feel informed enough to give my recommended builds on those, because I don't want to be misleading. I want the things that I say to be based on my experiences instead of guesswork. I can show you guys real fast the size of the smoke in this thing. Let's mount this. We'll just do a quick training room. We don't need here. We can do this. Show you the cooldown. Worst part about this, commenting on carriers or AA in any way is really unrewarding right now, because Wargaming keeps changing them, so you never know what the situation is going to be regarding them. Sure, let me just do... I don't know what I'm building. We'll build like this, this. I guess this would be the meme build. And then you can mix in some 3-pointer or whatever else you want. I'll just do training room so you guys can see the size of this smoke. Create battle. Please you on. Polar, standard battle, create. RPF? Yeah, whatever. You can run RPF if you want. This is just demonstration. Legendary mods most of the time, well, legendary mods are supposed to be side grades. You gotta keep that in mind. They're supposed to be side grades, offer a different type of playstyle. That's what Wargaming wanted. But ultimately, some of their design decisions are so poor that some upgrades are straight up better and some upgrades are straight up downgrades. There are a couple that are good side grades. I think this Minotaur one, for example, is a good example of a fun side grade. The Henri one is an example of a fun side grade. The Des Moines one is an example of a fun side grade. But then there's some that, like, on a battle, most Yamato. Yamato's whole purpose is the guns. And you give it an upgrade that improves guns, obviously it's going to be the best. Okay. So this is the Division Troll Minotaur. I want to show you just how large this smoke is and how long you can deploy it. This is the size of it, and keep in mind that because you're running this full Wapenage build, you can go on for almost a full minute of just laying smoke, smoke, smoke. Now, when is this the best? Of course, when you're divisioning. You got some teammates sailing behind you right here and making use of this gigantic corridor of smoke you're making for them. It's like... Oh, I can show you like this. To give you guys an idea of just how gigantic this smoke you lay is. You can completely basically block off a part of the map with this thing. It's huge. So, pretty damn hilarious when it comes to playing in a division. Right, I can show you the Des Moines as well. Let's see, where's the Des Moines? Wait, fuck, did I slot both the upgrades on? Let me go double check. Let me go double check I have the upgrades on it so I can show you. Calm down, UI. Where is Des Moines? There we go. Running both. Nope. A good thing I checked. Let's do training. Imagine 3 Minos running that. And basically, yes. There's so many troll things you can do with that. And that's why I think it's fun. Thank you for the subs, Bad Radio 24, Rag X Twitch for the 2, X Bruin for the 2, and Nima 333 for the 11 months. I muted the notifications for this one because, as I mentioned, sometimes I get copyright struck for I'm so humble playing in the background. How long does the smoke remain? 1.5 minutes. It's 90 something seconds, 91 I think. Is it worth grinding the Des Moines Legendary? It can be really good in competitive. Because you can just pop out behind it. Well, I can show you guys. This is running the Legendary mod and the Propulsion mod. Keep in mind that most of the time in the Des Moines, concealment isn't quite as important because you want to be shooting. And this kind of plays around that fact. So this is from full stationary to acceleration. You can see the speed. How quickly it goes. And we're basically over 30 knots already. It combines both the acceleration boosts. So obviously what this means is if you consider that the battleship, let's say, has 15-second travel time at, let's let this ship fully stop to make an example of this. Show it from reverse. Oh yeah, I can show that as well. Acceleration works both ways, of course. So if you're peeking out shooting, someone spots you, and you gotta go full reverse. Well, actually, we gotta be full stop. Let's be full stop first. Alright, from full stop to full reverse, it also goes, the first part goes so much faster into reverse. But the most important thing really here is the ambush potential of a Des Moines running this build. Let's see, let's stop. If we say that the battleship takes about 10-15 seconds for the shells to travel, at 8, let's say 8:40, I'll start accelerating. Let's pretend the battleship shoots us 8:40. 8:40 he shot, and at 8:30 the shells will land. Yeah, you can, that's 10 seconds. This is 15 seconds. So this thing is basically, for good players, this thing is brutal at juking shells. You even if you aim, let's say you aim here, and I accelerate, I'm still gonna dodge the shells. So this thing is extremely frustrating to shoot at range, because in order to hit an legendary module Des Moines at range, you kind of have to aim here and hope that he accelerates in a straight line over there. It's very difficult to hit it. You trade off concealment, you trade off reload. So obviously, well, you know, you don't trade off concealment, you just trade off main battery reload. So it is a trade-off, but it's still a very, very strong build. It's a very, very troll build. And it's very nasty because you see a Des Moines behind an island, you look away, then you look back, and he's already charging out because it takes him like 5 seconds to pop out from behind the island and ambush your broadside. It's insane. It's not, someone said it's nerfed concealment, but it's not, because it's not in the same slot. So what you're actually trading is DPM for maneuverability. That's the trade-off. Can you show carry module? Sure. Let's see, where is Midway? Oh, did they? Oh, no, wait, they removed them, didn't they? They removed them. They removed them because, well, they don't know what the hell they're doing right now, so hardly surprising. They didn't rework them after the rework, so yeah, there's no good. Then I covered all the legendary modules. Nice. They literally don't work. They straight up remove them. Anyway, that was all the different legendary upgrades. Now I'm gonna turn down back my music because now we have enough that I can post it on YouTube without being copyright struck.